So I just watched Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, and now I'm really excited to talk about it. Because, you know, I consistently cover every single superhero movie when they come out. So Into the Spiderverse is the third Spider-Man related movie to come out this year, with Spider-Verse releasing a little under 2 months after the last one. Now, Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes, which is something I feel every snarky millennial reviewer says, but I really haven't enjoyed how Sony handles the property since, like, 2007? Producers Avia Rod and Amy Pascal really have no idea how to handle a property as big as Spider-Man. A majority of the time, when a Spider-Man film is bad, it can in some way be traced back to them interfering to make what they think works. That is why I am skeptical about every Spider-Man film that comes out, and why I love when they turn out good, because it weirdly feels like an underdog story, being good despite its monumental roadblocks. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse is a lot of firsts for the Spider-Man franchise. It's the first theatrical animated film, and the first starring Miles Morales rather than Peter Parker. Spider-Verse is about Miles getting bit by a radioactive spider and witnessing the death of Peter Parker at the hand of Wilson Fisk, who is trying to access alternate dimensions. Because of a glitch, multiple Spider-Man and women from different dimensions get flung into Miles's, including a new Peter Parker. It is up to them to stop Fisk from reactivating the machine and get each Spider-Person back to their respective Spider universe. Now, while I do enjoy that we're getting a Spider-Man origin story that doesn't revolve around Peter and Uncle Ben dying, the actual story we have is pretty basic Spider-Man. Spider-Man gets bit by a spider, witnesses the death of someone really close to him, doesn't think he has what it takes to be a superhero, but finds it within himself to be the best superhero, all while being sponsored by Nike. It's a plot that is unoriginal, especially in the Spider-Man space, but what is original is how the story is presented. The animation style that tells this story is absolutely breathtaking. While there are some films that try their best to show some love to their comic book origins, this film goes out of its way to just be a comic book. The aesthetic comes off as a 3D motion comic with camera techniques being faked using styles from comic books. Like to fake depth of field, it adds multiple layers overlaid on top of each other to have a blurry background. That isn't the only cool touch that they have. Since this is a Spider-Verse film, we do get various Spider-People in it. While Peter Parker and Miles Morales are visually the same, every other Spider-Person is animated differently, even outside of their costumes. When we're introduced to Gwen, something immediately seems amiss when you compare her to the rest of the world. While everyone else has this comic booky style animated at varying frame rates, she comes off as always fluidly animated and full of colors, something that stands out from the rest of the film. It was a nice subtle way for the movie to hide from people that don't know the comics too well who she really was, while also making her design strikingly different to clue the audience in that she's more than meets the eye. Of course, subtlety is thrown right out the window when we get introduced to the other spiders, each one taken to the absolute extreme with their animation style. Spider-Man Noir has this nice black and white vintage comic book style. Penny Parker's animated with every single anime cliche you can think of, and then we have Spider-Ham, who straight up just looks like something out of a Looney Tunes cartoon. Seeing these characters interact was a highlight of the film, but despite all that, the actual characters themselves were pathetically weak. None of them have any impact on the story at all and legit feel like a ploy to sell tickets. Outside of their stereotypes, none of them had any character to them, coming off as a way to entice people to watch the movie who recognize them from the comics. Now I get it, they're glorified side characters, which would be perfectly okay if the movie was consistent about that idea. But instead they go out of their way to try to get you to care about these characters just as much as our main cast. I'm gonna spoil something from the climax, so I highly recommend skipping to this point in the video if you really want to go in blind. In the big, beautifully animated climactic battle scene at the end, that I truly feel like is one of the most amazingly animated action sequences ever put to screen, the giant robot that the anime Spider-Girl uses gets destroyed. The scene as a whole was showing the other non-main spiders slowly losing so that they could focus on Miles winning, and during it she's given so much screen time, she is shown crying, she has to be comforted by other characters, but it all comes off as entirely forced because she spent the entire movie doing nothing. We know nothing about her, yet the film is telling us that this is one of the saddest deaths of the entire film. And that isn't the only time either. When everyone is going back to their original universes, there's a heartfelt goodbye for each character before they go back, but it feels entirely unwarranted. The entire film, everyone except for Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy do nothing but shit on Miles. When it comes time for them to leave, they act like they believe in him from the beginning and they're best friends this entire movie. These three characters are honestly my biggest flaw with the movie. Individually, they are really awesome, and if you separate them from the actual plot, and trust me with how little they're involved, it is an easy thing to do. They all have hilarious character moments that parody immensely well the animation styles and cliches that they're imitating. I would love to see shorts for each of of these characters in their own universes because I want to see more of them, but they desperately needed to be integrated better into this story in order for them to work. To fix this issue, I feel like they either should have downplayed these characters into solely being used for jokes, or included like 100 different Spider people, so none of them would get development. Yet you still have a bunch of Easter eggs for diehard Spider-Man fans in a way that makes sense to the overall story. That also isn't my only criticism, however. As with a majority of Sony films, there is an egregious amount of product placement throughout the entire film that gets distracting, especially since the film goes out of its way to try to distance itself from our world. A lot of the jokes involve parodying brands and real-world concepts because the idea that this universe is the same but slightly different. And I really love that idea about the film. Small touches like calling the police the PDNY rather than the NYPD create this idea that we really are in this foreign world. It's very subtle, but in a film like this, subtlety goes a long way. So naturally, when the first thing that the movie shoves in your face is a nice pair of Sony headphones, Sony smartphones, and having every other shot end with Miles' beautiful Nike shoes, it really starts detracting from the film itself. I really don't mind product placement in film because I get it, but don't go out of your way to have so many little parody brands and make real life concepts different just to say that Sony is omnipresent in every universe. But unlike Spider-Man 3 or The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that is the only real example of studio interference that I could really see. If you can look past how much product placement there is, you really do have a super solid film. I'm excited to see what's in store with this iteration of Spider-Man next, and I really hope we do see these characters again. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse gets an 8 out of 10.